You see, me have it done. As someone who don't know if you bear heat. In chapter 16 and verse 12 and verse 13, the Bible tells us again, brothers and sisters, Eliab, Dathan joined with Korean. I've dealt with that already. Let me move on to Numbers chapter 16 let me move on to verse 41. Here, watch me now. And on the next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel complained against Aaron and Moses.
Again?
Saying, you have killed the people of the Lord. So after they are rebellious against the Lord, and the Lord responds, the Bible tells us, brothers and sisters, they come and they charge the very death upon it. They're not learning. Get tough.
Don't.
The last one, as I wrap up, is in chapter 20 and verse 2. You see God. And someone is going to say, Pastor kept to me. Pastor Bono.
Stone you again.
The makeup pastor.
Stone pastor, stone.
Help me, Jesus. 20, 10 minutes and I'm close. 10 minutes. The Bible says in chapter 20, last as I close, then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. And Miriam died there. She had to die. She couldn't make it over here. And she was buried there. Now the Bible tells us in verse 2, now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron.
Again.
The 9th time between Exodus and Leviticus that we see the congregation of Israel in any of its forms rising up to complain and rising up to contend with the leadership that God has appointed. And the people contended with Moses and spake and said, if only you had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the assembly of the Lord into the wilderness that we and our animals should die here? Why have you made us come out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of grains or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink. So Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto them. Then the Lord said to Moses, take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, and gather the congregation together, and speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water from them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their animals. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he had commanded them. Let me pause here. I don't want you to forget that this is years of putting up with Israel's rebellion. I don't want you to forget that every time these people had an issue, they cried out, they quarreled, they challenged the leadership that God gave.
Cuss him out.
Moses bore with it. He was a fighter, but he was not going to fight that. He was going to take it as though it was, and he's going to pray for them. Every other time when it was done, he prayed. Every other time, he was faithful to his God. But as Moses took that rod,
hit Jesus 2 times.
When my boss reached to that rock, he looked on them with anger And he says, "Hear now, you
Come
rebels."
drink. If I know, tell them somebody that I say drink and
Let me tell you why you must deal with things as they happen. When you don't deal with it when it happens. You see when you burst? You see when that pipe went bust? You see when pressure reach you? You see all those things that your husband doing that you don't like, that you sit down there and quiet about? Oh, I told you I'm going to be preaching today. You see all those things that your child does that you don't like, and you decide you're not going to correct, you're not going to address, you're not going to deal with because you don't want to be the bad parent. You see all those things that are happening, that your wife or husband or child or boss, when pressure reach you and that pipe busts.
trouble as I am.
The man that is known as the meekest man that ever walked the face of this earth. The man who had anger issues, but because he was committed to God, he suppressed and worked with God's divine plan. Every time he could have gotten angry, the Lord subdued him. Every time he could have reacted, the Lord subdued him. He chose the Lord's way. But this day Moses was red. Said, "Must we bring water for you out of this rock?" Then he lifted his hand and he struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and the animals drank. Let me tell you something. Even, watch me now. Watch me now. Watch me. Even when the servant of the Lord is wrong, he will not allow you to suffer because of his wrong.
Water still come.
The command of the Lord was, speak to the rock.
Not to eat it.
And the very people that upset him, that years upon years upon years were being oppositional to his leadership, that caused him to be in the emotional, psychological state that he now was. You want to be a leader?